All right, so we're just after 7 o'clock and I think we're going to get started. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the community conversation on creating the kind of housing that we need. My name is Liz Benyon, and I am the chair of Biodiversity and Climate Action Niagara, which is a collective of 23 area groups, plus over 100 individuals who aren't associated with any other group, but who wanted to be a part of this. BCAC advocates for better environmental, climate, and urban policy planning at all levels of government. BCAC organized the Greenbelt rallies around Niagara, and we fought for and got Niagara's first natural heritage system as part of the region's new official plan. We meet with our MPPs and submit comments to the government on proposed policy. And we collaborate with larger advocacy groups like Environmental Defense and Ontario Nature on their campaigns. And we support the efforts of our local member groups here in Niagara. We also lead efforts to prevent bad planning locally, such as the region's proposal to pave over provincially significant wetlands and significant woodlands by expanding and extending Merritt Road between Thorold and Pelham. For more information about BCAC, or if you would like to join our email list, I have put our email address in the chat. So tonight, we're pleased to bring you two informative speakers to begin our community discussion about how to get the housing that we need. Their presentations will be followed by an open forum where we encourage you to ask questions, share your thoughts, and offer ideas about how we can press politicians to implement solutions. This session is being recorded and will be available on BCAC's YouTube channel, as well as on the Alliance for a Livable Ontario. Your first speaker tonight is Victor Doyle, a registered professional planner. From 1988 to 2017, Victor held a variety of senior positions in the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, including lead planner of the Greenbelt Plan. And from 2002 to 2010, manager of provincial planning for Central Ontario, including the region of Niagara. He is now engaged in advocacy, education, and awareness, raising initiatives related to the ongoing planning of the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Our second speaker is Franz Hartmann. Franz is the coordinator for the Alliance for a Livable Ontario. Franz was the executive director of the Toronto Environmental Alliance from 2007 to 2018. Before that, he worked for Jack Layton, both at the Toronto City Hall and in Ottawa. Franz has a PhD in urban environmental politics from York University. Franz has also been actively involved with the Greenbelt since 2009. He eventually became chair of the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance and then its coordinator in 2020. So welcome to everyone, welcome to our speakers, and Victor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
You're on mute, Victor.
Auspicious start. I was just welcoming the four-footed friend we heard on the background. I'm going to share my screen and show you a couple of maps and a few slides, and we'll go from there. Where did it go? Well, I guess, is that it? No, I lost it. Let's try that. Is that showing up?
No, I'm just seeing Zoom right now.
All right. What did I do? We just had it up and running before everybody attended. One second.
Victor, if you stop screen share, try it again, and before you actually, and then you get a choice of what screen to share.
All right. Sorry. Now I've sort of lost my, oops. Sorry, everybody.
There we are.
All right. So I've lost my ability to see everybody though, but in any event, why don't we just start? I'm a geographer by training, and so I always start with maps because we're talking about the land that we all live in, and beautiful Niagara, part of the southern part of the greater Golden Horseshoe. And you know, this is all the land we have, and we need to take care of it forever. And so one of the ways is to make sure that we're heading the right way with respect to housing. And Franz is going to talk to you in more detail than I am about that. But just a couple of recent task force looked at this. The Ford government's own task force on the top right said we really need to focus on intensifying in our built up areas and a full spectrum of housing. And over on the left, most recently in March, federal national task force said essentially the same thing: focus growth in our existing cities and communities. And even down at the bottom, this is a recent quote from an area developer: build housing where we work and play. And it's important to remember why we're doing that and why these task forces think we should do that. And it's because building walkable communities, starting at the top, leads to better health outcomes and lower health costs. So there's an economic angle. You know, our beautiful Great Lakes and other water resources are better protected. Our food security and growth from economic contributions of farmland, certainly nature. Importantly, the reduced costs of infrastructure. There was a nice Facebook post today that the Greenbelt, imagine if the whole Greenbelt would paved, what kind of flooding we would have had that big rainstorm yesterday. And certainly gridlock we can all relate to. And if we aren't building outwards, we can support transit better and use less energy and create less greenhouse gases at the same time. So it's really important, in addition to creating affordable housing. And the government has played what I call the blame game. They're saying that our lack of affordable housing and housing writ large is caused by provincial land use plans and our environmental, farmland, natural heritage protection laws and policies, that the municipalities are embroiling everybody in this red tape, the developers, and that citizens are stopping housing, the NIMBYs. So they're blaming everybody, and they're doing that in part because they're saying there's not enough land to build housing. Well, we've looked at this question in detail, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of acres of beautiful, what looks like farmland already approved for housing. So there's absolutely no truth to the rumor and rhetoric that we need to do, continue to expand outwards to accommodate our growth. Including removing, this is a blow up of the GTA. Here's beautiful Hamilton beside Niagara. The black areas down here, up in Newmarket, over in Pickering, these are the big greenbelt takeouts. And so the government was saying, not only do we need more land, we need more land from the greenbelt. At the same time, they were telling Halton region and places like Hamilton, these lands in red, that despite their council wishes, they had to add all this urban land to their communities. And this is no coincidence. It's led to this, what I call the sprawl land speculation strategy. It's a systematic erosion and dismantling in the last generation or two of our smart growth planning in the province, which we were recognized as a world leader. And it goes like this: get the province out of the way, get the regions like Niagara out of the way, severely weaken or eliminate our environmental laws, get citizens out of the way, don't let them participate, override municipal councils, just like they did in Hamilton and Halton, adding those thousands and thousands of acres, and then intimidate or penalize or incent municipalities to deliver this provincial agenda, including the completely undemocratic strong mayor powers, for only a third of council can pass a bylaw, and then remove all the anti-sprawl policies we've had and enable it all by pushing new highways. And so, you know, quickly on a couple of those, they're proposing to abolish the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So here's a picture of it. Together with the green belt and the big move, our regional transportation plan, this was a three-legged approach to managing the millions of people who are moving here and providing the housing they need at the same time, and transportation and natural protection and farmland protection. But they're proposing to abolish the green belt, and they've eviscerated our conservation authority, so they can't even do watershed planning at this scale anymore. That wasn't enough. They said, now we're going to take it to the regions. So they just moved forward to get rid of York, Peel, and Halton as in terms of regional planning. Durham, Waterloo, and Niagara and Simcoe are to follow. And it prevents these upper tiers from looking at the big picture geographies that they've been responsible for the last 50 plus years. And they're even preventing them from appealing lower tier planning documents, even though they still have a responsibility for sewer and water and transit and social housing, public health. And it's all done to transfer the power to plan and grow to the lower tiers. So rather than 21 upper and single tiers, the top map, looking at this region of 10 million with another 5 million people to come, we're down to something like 86 lower tiers. Many of them are small rural townships with no capacity, and there's no vehicle for coordinating all this growth with the province and the regions removed. And this was because the development sector has much greater control over these local councils than they do over the regions. So let's get rid of all the environmental protection as well. So I talked about conservation authorities. They've weakened the Environmental Assessment Act, the Endangered Species Act, our wetland protections, our natural features and systems protections. This is all consciously being done. And let's get the citizens out of the way. They've passed over 125 of these ministers' zoning orders, which basically don't have to follow any planning policy. There's no public participation. In my 30 years in the government, I think we did 15. They've done 125 in like 4 years. They said citizens are very limited in the EA process. Just recently, they've removed anyone's ability, any citizen or community group, from appealing their municipal plans or zoning bylaws to the planning tribunal. And they've let developers continue to appeal, and they've removed the previous prohibition on appealing settlement expansions. So really, the planning tribunal is now just a forum for developers to go take their best wishes and aspirations to, and everyone else is cut out of it. In terms of more anti-growth policies, they've just released a new provincial policy statement. It's not finalized, but they've removed any requirement for intensification in terms of numeric targets. Where we're building out on the farmland, any greenfield density targets to make sure we're using it efficiently. They've extended the time that we're going to plan out for, allowing even more farmland to be converted at this point in time, and they're abandoning requirements for agriculture and natural heritage systems. They're now allowing settlement expansions anywhere, anytime. You don't have to do any sort of comprehensive analysis to justify it. Just submit your application. They won't let municipalities even require developments to come in and talk to them about settlement expansion applications. They're allowing new settlements in the middle of anywhere, along with some other stuff. And they're topping that all off with major highways, including through the Greenbelt. This is the proposed 413 from Halton Hills over to York Region. This is the Bradford bypass up on the south shores of Lake Simcoe from Highway 400 to 404. So all of this is being done to promote low density, expensive housing on the farmlands, just like we have for the last 50 years, and that we've been trying to reverse course on. With respect to housing in particular, they're not even walking their talk. We have a tool called inclusionary zoning to allow municipalities to require affordable housing units in developments. And they've put limits on those, 5% in only 25 years. Toronto was going to be 10 or 15% in 99 years. So they're kneecapping municipalities on this. We're losing a lot of affordable housing through demolition and condo redevelopment. And again, municipalities can require replacement of that affordable housing, but the minister has given himself the authority to restrict their ability to do that. Where they have reduced development charges and other community benefits, there's no requirement for the developers to pass those savings on to consumers. So arguably the money will just go into their pocket and the price will stay the same. Where we even are imposing big developments, the province, not we, they aren't having affordable housing requirements. They're only minimal, like 5%. They've even overridden affordable housing requirements in official plans. So I could go on, but I thought I had another slide. So they've done a couple of things that are positive, but basically, and I'll talk to those in a second, they basically are a diversion from what is clearly the overarching strategy to promote urban sprawl to the benefit of big speculative development interests who have acquired farmland out there and who are now speculating even more based on the reception the government has given them. So I'm going to turn over to Franz. A couple of things the government has done is required all municipalities to allow 3 units per parcel. So if you have a house, you could have 2 in your house and a laneway garage, perhaps. They've waived the GST on purpose-built rental because they realize more people need rental housing as fewer households can afford ownership housing. And they've waived development charges on nonprofit housing. So there's a few things they have done, but they are completely overshadowed by the big picture strategy that they've embarked on. So I'll turn it over to you, Franz.
Thanks, Victor. If you could just stop sharing your screen then.
All right. I'll try to do that. Stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you. And I'll turn my screen on. Okay, so as Liz said, my name is Franz Hartmann. I'm the coordinator of the Alliance for Livable Ontario. For those of you new to the ALO, we're an alliance of people and groups representing hundreds of thousands of Ontarians from many different sectors. We want to build a livable Ontario that stops provincial government policies that falsely claim that they're solving the housing crisis, when in fact they're actually harming our communities and undermining protection of farmland, natural areas, and democratic institutions. We have over 1,000 members, individual members, over 200 individual groups from representing farmers, planners, environment, housing affordability, tenants, neighborhood associations, labor, healthcare, academia, businesses, and much more. If you want to learn more about the Alliance for Livable Ontario, just go to livableontario.ca. So I want to just start my talk by making 2 kind of observations. If we want to protect farmland, natural areas, and the Greenbelt from costly and destructive suburban sprawl, we need to make sure the public is demanding the right actions from government. And if we want the next generation of Ontarians to have housing that is affordable, and part of livable communities, we need to make sure the public is demanding the right actions from governments. So what are those right actions? Well, we answered that question in the form of 5 actions that will actually do both. And that's called Taking Action Together, 5 Ways to Make Homes Affordable in Ontario. And I apologize, I'm going to have to stop screen share for a moment because I realized that I forgot to toggle a button that allows me to share sound, which is what I need to do. So let me, as they say, a picture is equivalent to 1,000 words, while a 3-minute video is probably the equivalent to a long essay. So I want to show you a 3-minute video. And Liz, if you can hear the sound, maybe you could just give me a thumbs up on your just in real life, just so I can. I'm sure it's happening.
You probably know someone who can't find a home they can afford. It wasn't always like this. And while we can argue and debate about what happened and didn't happen, talking won't make affordable homes happen. So a bunch of us got together and found 5 ways that will. Number 1, gutting farmland and nature to build McMansions in places where you need 2 cars and have to install expensive infrastructure is not the answer. We need to build in the right places, affordable, livable neighborhoods where people already live and want to live. And we already have enough ready-to-build room inside our towns and cities to do it. Number 2, while everyone needs something different and affordable, too many of these are being built. We need to build a wide variety of housing types: low-rise, mid-rise, not-for-profit, multi-unit, multi-family, multi-bedroom. A multiplex of more affordable, appropriate options for every stage of life. Number 3, the way most homes are built and the laws around building them are not built for affordability or speed. We need to build smarter and faster, like more wood frame and prefab panel homes, and updating old rules, like high-rises needing parking for everyone. We can cut costs and time with faster and smarter rules, approvals, and building methods. Number 4, for decades, our governments built and operated affordable, non-market housing. Then, affordable housing stopped going up, but rents didn't. We need to invest heavily in non-market affordable housing. And we is our governments. Builders will build it, co-ops and other groups will run it, but our governments must invest in it because almost no one else is. Number 5, we can't be hurrying like mad to approve and demolish and build without stopping to think about neighborhoods. We need to make housing not just affordable, but part of livable communities. Affordable means building in the right places, building smarter and faster, and building more choices and more non-market homes. While livable means building neighborhoods, close, convenient communities that bring everything we need together, including each other. These are our 5 ways to affordability. But there's actually one more. We need everyone, governments, the private sector, and nonprofit housing providers to work together to fix this. And we need you to tell your MPP that they've got 5 things to do to help everyone have an affordable, livable home now. Learn all that you can do at 5wayshome.ca.
Whoops. Sorry about
You
that.
probably know someone.
So, as I think we have all learned from ad people, the way in which messages get in your brain is by repeating them. So I'm just going to repeat these so that for those of you who don't have these messages in your brain yet, you're that much closer. Number 1, we need to build in the right places. We need to build in existing towns and cities. We do not need more suburban sprawl. Number two, we need to build a wide variety of housing types. We don't need we don't need to continue just building single family homes, nor, postage stamp size condos and 50-story towers. We need to build smarter and faster. We have to get rid of bylaws that require, for example, parking spaces for everyone. We need to invest heavily in non-market affordable housing, because this has not happened since the early 1980s, or the early 1990s, I should say. We need to get back to that, because it's clear that the private sector cannot do this. And five, we need to make housing affordable and part of livable communities. We need to make sure that there are neighborhoods that people can be part of, not simply housing. So why did we do this? We had three kind of campaign goals that we identified at the outset. The first was to provide hope for Ontarians that there are doable solutions to the housing crisis. Victor gave a very, very dark, understandably so, picture of what's been going on in the last 2 years in Ontario. We want to show with our 5 Ways Home campaign that there is hope, that there are doable solutions. This is not rocket science. This is something that we can do, that we have done, and which is happening in many jurisdictions across the planet. We also want to get our message out to as many people as possible by making it easy to understand and easy to share. We learned from the Greenbelt victory that a key ingredient to bringing about, to ending bad policy and getting good policy to happen, is by talking to people, using our networks to connect to them, and giving them messaging that resonates with their experiences and giving them hope. That's what this is. And then finally, we wanted to provide an alternative to the very destructive actions that are being pushed by the province. Victor was very good at laying it out, the destruction of farmland and natural areas that's taking place only to make the housing crisis worse, the dramatic reduction in public oversight of development, and the assumption that somehow or another the private sector is going to solve everything. They won't. They've acknowledged as much. The report has been endorsed by some very significant, prominent groups and individuals, developers like Alex Spiegel. He's the partner at Windmill Development. They do a lot of really good development here in Toronto. Greg Cerbera, who, of course, some of you will remember was the finance minister under the Dalton McGuinty government. He's also partner of one of the biggest developers in Ontario. We have planners involved, environmental groups, the Federation of Urban Neighborhoods endorsed this, farming community, the Ontario Farmland Trust. We've got Carolyn Weitzman, a very prominent housing activist, the Co-op Housing Federation of Toronto, David Miller, former mayor of Toronto, New Democrat MP or candidate at one point, and of course David Crombie, who many of you know, another former mayor of Toronto, and also a cabinet minister under the Brian Mulroney government. So we have, some political support from all political parties and a whole bunch of other individuals and groups. So I want to just take you on a really quick tour of the 5 Ways Home website. I urge you, if you haven't already done so, to spend some time on it. If you come to the home page, you'll see this. And you'll have an opportunity to jump to one of the 5 action areas. And when you do that, for example, the first one, what you'll see is a very short description, what it's about, a summary. You'll have a link to a video. We've created 1-minute videos for each of the 5 action areas. Then you can press the read more on this topic button, and that actually gets you to a full page where it explains the problem and it identifies the recommendations, the actions that each order of government can take, in this case, to build in the right places. And then there's also a take action section. We want this information to be shared with as many Ontarians as possible. So we've created a whole set of shareable links. The first one is to the full report. I've just shown you the cover page here. It's I must say, a beautifully designed report that contains all the information I've been talking about, minus the videos, of course. It's well written. It looks good. and it's designed for your neighbor to read, right? If they're into reading this sort of thing. If not, there are videos, as I said. We have shareable links here to our Facebook posts, to Instagram posts, and we are doing everything we can just to get the word out so that people will share these links with with people they're connected with. And then, of course, we have a take action page. And there are 3 very specific actions people can take. One is speak to your friends, family, and neighbors about 5 actions. Send them any of the links that are available. Contact your elected officials. We've got a section about how to do that. If this is new to you, send them the links below. What we want is as many people as possible to hear about our 5 ways homes, our 5 actions, and then demand that their elected officials actually implement this. And then, of course, finally share our videos and content on social media channels, because we think that the more people see this, the more that they hear about it, the more they're going to go, yeah, this makes sense. And that's how we can put pressure on our elected officials. So what can you do right now? After this webinar, of course, just visit 5wayshome.ca and share our messaging with your contacts and networks. You know best how to do that, how to connect with people, what to say. If you are with an organization, invite us to meetings and/or events where we can share our message. I will gladly tailor a presentation that can be 2 minutes long, it can be 20 minutes long, it can be 40 minutes long. You tell me how long you want it to be, and I will gladly come up with a presentation for that. And then finally, feel free to join the Alliance for Livable Ontario if you want to stay in touch, if you want to find out more about what we're up to. And then finally, I've just given you the email address there, info@livableontario.ca, if you have any more questions. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it back to Liz.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Victor and Franz. I appreciate all your knowledge and the work that Alliance for Livable Ontario has done to try and share these messages that are really important, especially, I think, as we're looking at a potential early election. And so it is really important that we start engaging people. We are Biodiversity and Climate Action is an advocacy group, so I'm not afraid to speak out about what I think about this particular government that we have right now. And, I think people really don't understand how many terrible changes have been made and how citizens have been cut out of the process and what happened when strong mayor's powers were put in. We just had an example, for instance, in Caledon, where a mayor decided to open up 11 pieces of land for development that even the province didn't want her to open up, but they've given her that power. She can, do as she please, and she is. So anyways, enough about me talking and enough about all of us talking. We want to hear from you. So please feel free. And right now, for some reason, I can't, okay, there, I can see everybody. All right, so just use that, the hand raise feature. And just raise your hand if you'd like to say something. I'd like to hear what you have to say about any of this. What are your concerns here in Niagara? What do you think Niagara needs that we don't have? What should we be doing? How can we reach our politicians? I mean, any of these subjects is open for discussion. So please feel free to weigh in.
And while people are thinking or figuring out how to put their hands up, I'll make one other observation. The 5 action areas I've identified are actually a really good tool. Also, each action area you can assess how is government doing? Are they actually building in the right places? And I think, like Liz, I would conclude that this and of course, as Victor has so nicely pointed out, the government has failed on implementing policies that move us forward on, if not all, then the vast majority of those 5 action areas.
All right, so please feel free to weigh in. Just raise your hand and then go ahead.
Liz, I don't see where we can even raise a hand.
Okay, so down in the, where is it here? Oh, that is a good point. Where is it?
Reactions.
You should have a little bar somewhere when you.
Franz, I don't. I'm just looking at it now. I don't on my screen.
I don't either.
Okay, so you know what? Just speak up and we'll do our best to coordinate it. So Alan, you want to go first?
Liz, yeah, well, thank you for coordinating this meeting, but I got to tell you what I've heard tonight about, in Oakville at the Midtown by the GO train, we are now the first in Ontario to have a transit orientated community at a GO train instead of a subway station. And I don't know whether this is good or bad because the developers are coming in with 61 stories of height, and they say that's what they need. And it's nice to say, oh, this is great, we're not going to expand outside of the urban area. But 61 stories, it just seems ridiculous. And they're looking at tramping in maybe 70 or 80,000 people in 43 hectares. Like, talk about people per hectare. It's not working. Franz, I'm sorry, but everything you said, it's frustrating right now for a lot of us on council. Maybe not the majority of us, but a lot of us. What
So
can we do?
Well, can I respond to that?
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
So I think our action number 3, build a wide variety of housing types, it directly addresses that. We have seen way too much emphasis being put on essentially high-rise condominiums, and very little, if any, emphasis on building so-called missing middle housing, building housing along main streets. In what you would call in Toronto, we have something called boulevards. Those are kind of like not quite main streets, but kind of secondary main streets. There are a whole bunch of different ways of introducing density into existing towns and cities that do not require high rises. And that's why we need to build a diversity of housing types. And that's why governments need to do a whole bunch of things to open up the opportunity to build a diversity of housing.
Franz, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree. Like, we have a gentleman who is an expert, qualified person to say all we need to do in Midtown to meet the numbers, which is 35,000, is maximum 20-story buildings. Okay, but that's not where it's going. All of a sudden, the developers are putting in their own plans, 61 stories, and away we go. And and there's no, and then here's the real spin. I feel sorry for the young people coming out and saying, yes, we need these because we need affordable housing. There isn't an affordable house anywhere for young people in Oakville at this point. Yeah. I'm sorry, and that's what they're all hooking up. If you build enough, it's going to become very affordable. And going up, it's not working.
Yeah. No,
So,
I agree.
so one of the things I would say about that, Alan, and you know it to be true, is that the problem is we don't have proper planning at the provincial level.
Got it. It's bad. It is.
The
terrible.
overdevelopment is an issue, and developers are getting away with murder. And the other thing that goes back to what Franz said in the 5 ways home, we have to create livable communities. And I was just reading about downtown Toronto with all the condos going up, and what they're losing is the little corner store that people used to be able to go to get milk and bread, and the little hairdresser that used to be there, and the little restaurant. And so we're creating these condo towers with no community. And we need better planning. That's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned.
And the people building the condos are going into receivership left and right all over the whole Greater Toronto area.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
a big mess, but the mess is at the provincial level for sure.
They've caused the problem, and it's not being resolved. But I'll move it on to other people. Liz, I like what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else like to weigh in? Just speak up, since we don't have that feature where you can raise your hand. What do you see as some of the, so go ahead. I saw Colleen.
Hi,
I saw you there. Go ahead.
My name is Colleen and I live in Pelham. And I wanted to tag on to something that Alan just said, which is about feeling bad for young people. But I really feel like young people are not engaging in this fight either, because they're feeling hopeless about it. So I think that is something that needs to be addressed in the campaign, is how do we get them fighting for their right, which should be there to have affordable housing options.
So I can address that. Number one, if you know young people who are feeling hopeless, please consider sending them to fiveways-home.ca and say, here are some practical solutions. And if they are, number 4 is, invest heavily in non-market affordable housing. Many people, we need a lot more of those sort of homes built. We need housing cooperatives. We need not-for-profit organizations that have been given capital funds to build truly affordable units, keep them affordable. The point is the 5 action items will all together lead towards affordability. And I'm hoping that if we can get the word out to them, that there is a way forward, and that if we work together to make this happen, are they going to have affordable unit in a year? No, but we'll at least start going down that road, as opposed to the road we're going down now, as Victor pointed out, is taking us in the exact opposite direction.
Colleen, I think you brought up a really important point, because I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. A lot of our young people are feeling hopeless for a lot of reasons. And I think we do have to think about how we get them engaged, and how we, some of us folks who've been in this for a long time and we fought a lot of battles, we have seen some successes. Young people are looking around and just thinking everything is bleak and there's no way they can change things. So we have to figure out a way to get them engaged and understanding that they can make a difference. And the biggest difference they can make coming up is going to be voting.
Yes.
People have to vote for the things that they want. Fiona, I see your hand.
Yeah, it was a nice segue into what I was going to say, Liz. Okay, how do we put this? I think the two things could go together. And I'm wondering if you're interested at all in any of the political parties, particularly picking up on and/or endorsing your 5 ways. Obviously, the PCs aren't going to do it, but I can't help thinking that, particularly if we have an election coming up, that if I would, I certainly can't see that Mike Schreiner wouldn't be endorsing the 5 ways. It just makes complete sense to me. I don't know. I wouldn't know about the Liberals, but my goodness, that would certainly get these, the 5 ways, foregrounded in the media, very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion, Fiona, and you'll be happy to know that earlier today I was doing a first draft of a letter to all the political parties, asking them to endorse the 5 ways action items as part of their platforms. We hope to get that sent out to the political parties in the coming week or two. And we hope that the political parties, including the Conservatives, will look at this and say, this makes common sense. What I didn't mention was that how we arrived at these 5 action areas was by doing our homework. We read dozens and dozens of reports. We talked to dozens and dozens of housing experts, and we is a group of what we called the housing panel, made up of developers, land use planners, environmental activists, housing experts, farmers, a cross section of individuals who came together, who put their political differences, their partisanship differences aside, and said, let's come up with 5 common sense solutions that everybody will look at and go, yeah, this makes sense. So we've also come up with language and a framing that political parties who are serious about the housing crisis would go, yeah, it makes sense doing this. Look at who's behind this. Look at who's endorsed this. Our hope is that after we've done that, people will be demanding of their elected officials to adopt the actions in our 5 ways home policies. And if enough politicians hear that from enough political parties, fingers crossed, positive change happens.
Annette, go ahead.
Hi, I live in Grimsby, and Grimsby is now looking at their official plan, reviewing their official plan. They've got it's a town talks, and they're looking for input to go into their new official plan. With this 5 ways, is there some report that residents can, pass all of this information on and to implement into our new official plan?
Short answer is yes. You go to fiveways.home.ca. You will have an option to download the reports, the one that I mentioned during my presentation. It's and each of there's essentially 5 sections, one for each of the action areas. And at the end of each section, there is a list of actions each order of government can take, including municipal governments. And so, it's are they specific enough for Grimsby? No, but they'll give you a general, they provide a general focus. So for example, building in the right places in Grimsby, it probably means, do not build on farmland and natural areas, but, think about doing proper intensification, building a wide variety of housing types. That could be made to say, let's put an emphasis not on single family homes, but on building missing middle homes for all stages in people's lives, for younger people, for older people, etc. Bottom line is the report is a good framework from which to develop specific recommendations that would be suitable to Grimsby and the official plan process.
Do you touch on looking at where to build, like with regards to floodplains? Do you touch any of that?
We don't go into that level of detail. Of course, when I say, build in existing towns and cities, it doesn't mean anywhere within an urban boundary. There are obvious places that, no-goes areas. As we found out here in Toronto, I'm in Toronto, we have to deal with floods, and, building in floodplains is probably a bad idea. And even when you're building, it's important to think about permeable surfaces. So, the 5 action areas give a broad brushstroke. Here's how to do it. But then you need to, of course, as you rightly pointed out, Annette, you got to be careful. You got to make sure that you've got the right, you're picking the right spaces. That's why it's so sad that the province has gone ahead and essentially kneecapped the ability of conservation authorities to provide the sort of advice that city planners need to figure out where to build and where not to build, and why eliminating higher tier governments where you have that expertise, it's so devastating. That being said, we still have to demand of our municipal officials to do this work, and hopefully they'll have the courage to hire on the right people to do that.
Well, thank you very much.
Could I ask her?
Yep, Fiona, sorry, Fiona, hang on 1 second. We're going to let Lori go, and then you're up next. Go ahead, Lori.
Thanks, Liz. I'm a city councillor in Niagara Falls, and 2 things are going on. I really liked what Annette said about the official plan, because Niagara Falls is going through the same thing. So I'm going to pass that along to our consultants, the report. I've already downloaded it, so that's great. And the other thing that the city of Niagara Falls is doing, and we're not having a lot of success with, we had a housing report done in 2019, and it was supposed to allow 40% target of affordable housing. Now, affordability has definitely changed from 2019 to now. The definition of affordable housing is $539,000 for a home. I don't really know where you're going to be able to find a home for that. It just isn't happening. And then when you add the rental amounts, it just isn't happening. So every single time we have a development, we go through the same thing. Is it affordable? No, it's not. And then our planner will also come back and say, well, it's just a target. It's a 40% target. So it's not 40% every single development. It's a target. So one development comes and there's 800 units in it. Oh, sorry, we don't have any. Then we go to another one. The land is too expensive. It can't be affordable. The land is an irregular shape. It wouldn't allow for affordable units. So I just feel like I'm going around and around in circles, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'm really glad to see all of the work that you've put into all of this. So thank you.
Yeah, well, and the answer, Councillor Lococo, I'm sorry, I hope I haven't mispronounced that, is invest heavily in non-market affordable housing, and that investment has to come from the provincial and federal governments. Municipalities do not have the tax base to collect the money to pay for all the affordable housing that's needed. The province and the federal government does. And as the video alluded to, during the 60s and 70s and 80s, that's exactly what happened. The federal and provincial governments were investing, heavily every year in building non-market affordable housing. Much of that was handed over and is now run by not-for-profits and housing co-ops. Some of it was run by provincial housing authorities. This is the method that is used across the planet. I always refer to Vienna as an excellent example of a city that has been doing this for over 100 years. They have a very vibrant non-market affordable housing system. They're still developing tens of thousands of new units every year. And they have a very viable market housing system where the market is supplying different sorts of housing. These can coexist. They have coexisted. We need to come back to that, and we need to essentially acknowledge that the private sector is not going to do this for exactly the reasons you outlined a few minutes ago. It doesn't make money for them. So let's stop pretending that it does, and let's make sure that that public dollars are investing in building truly affordable units that will remain affordable for decades.
Thank you. One of the other challenges that we're experiencing is we have a private university, and we were just told that 2,000 students will be registered by September. And I know that the provincial government has said that universities and colleges are responsible for guaranteeing housing, but I'm seeing lots of posts out there for students looking for housing. And it's not even just the students, they're bringing their families over for master's programs. So people are looking for accommodations, and it's a family of 3, a family of 4, a family of 5. I don't know what we're going to do in September with all those people looking for housing. So I think that's going to be a challenge here in Niagara Falls as well.
There's another angle, sorry, Fiona, just on the economics. So my own view and experience, private sector developers need to come to the table with affordable units in any meaningfully sized housing development. It's their obligation. We need more government affordable housing, but they have to pay, because that's one of their obligations, in my view, and in other jurisdictions. And so what happens is, if all municipalities start requiring developers to provide 5 or 10% affordable units, and it's going to cost them X, well, it needs to be absorbed in the cost of the land. And all developers will start saying, we need to pay less for land because we have this housing obligation. And the people who are selling the land have to lower their expectations. They're still going to make a lot of money, but not as much as they would have. And the market forces will, if everyone does it right, will start to play out. And that price of land will come down and make the ability to provide some percentage of units in every project affordable or more affordable.
So Victor, just to what you just said, land speculation is a major cause of unaffordability. And everything the province has been doing has been fostering land speculation. So the provinces, every move they've made is diametrically opposed to creating affordable housing, because land speculation is driving the price of land through the roof. And again, that can change with different policies. Fiona, I was going to let you go next. Go ahead.
I'm somebody who rents, and I'm lucky enough to be renting a fairly large space that we've lived in for 32 years. In a building that will be 100 years old in 2 years' time. And we were okay until the new owner decides he wants to renovate our half of the building. I brought this up to the city and nobody's really listening because, you know, it seems that they don't see people like me, except I happen to think that people like me are actually probably the majority in a lot of towns and cities. You know, people who are living on small fixed incomes, and certainly so many young people are now and are going to be in that situation, you know, with costs of everything rising. It just seems that this whole notion of housing being something for profit is just, it's just stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just going to lead to social breakdown. I was wondering if you dealt at all in your presentations with taking a good hard look at existing housing stock. What is this new building all the time, when some of the time some homes that were built say just after the war, you know, are actually in perfectly good shape if they were renovated.
Action 5, make homes make housing affordable and in part of livable communities. We talk about the importance of helping, for example, not-for-profit organizations buy rental units that are being put on the market, so that instead of the rental unit or a building which might be a bit older like yours, Fiona, you know, it's typical that, you know, somebody buys the property, knocks down the rental unit and puts something new up, and probably replaces it with a building that has condos in it, which are then sold, and all of the rental units are disappeared. Imagine if instead of that happening, when the property went up for sale, there was a pot of money that not-for-profits, housing co-ops could go to and say, hey, we want to buy this building. We're going to do some renovations, but then we're going to run it as a not-for-profit, and we're going to ensure that rents stay affordable. That's what should happen. And so one of the recommendations in section 5 actually addresses that.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Anybody else like to add something? Just speak up. So while people are thinking about what they might want to say, one thing that I think is really important is connecting with our elected representatives at all levels of government. Because as Franz said, you know, the federal government has to get back into building truly affordable housing. And so does the provincial government. And here in Niagara, especially with a provincial election probably in the offing, we have 3 NDP MPPs, and then we have 1 PC MPP. And Biodiversity and Climate Action Niagara has had conversations with some of our MPs, and we have had conversations with our PC MPP. Not that it helped, but we tried. And I will commit on behalf of our organization to go and have conversations with all our Niagara MPs and MPPs as soon as we can. We'll request those meetings and we'll go and have those conversations with them. And I would be happy to have members of our community attend those meetings. So I will be reaching out to everybody on our list to do that at some time in the future. And as well, I'll also commit on behalf of the group that we will write to all levels of government on the housing issue. Again, it's not that we haven't done it before, but we will do it again. And then we have to figure out, I think, as a community, how do we reach out to the people who have not been paying attention to this? You know, how do we share these messages? And there's a lot of good messages out there. The 5 Ways Home thing is good and important to share, but we have to figure out especially how to get these people that are really truly being affected by the housing affordability crisis, especially seniors and young people and renters, especially here, because we're not building the things that those people need. We have an aging community here in Niagara, and we're not building things for people, for instance, who have owned homes and then, don't want the responsibility or the cost of maintaining those homes as they age. We're not building anywhere for them to go. So I think we all need to think about, and we'll continue to have community discussions about how do we reach into those groups and get them active. We need to make sure that people feel like they can make a difference, because we still can, despite how, the horrible situation that I think we're in with this current government. We can make a difference. And if not through our advocacy, then through the ballot box. So I'll continue to push those things here. All right, I'm going to shut up again. So I have to keep, telling myself to be quiet. And I'd like to hear from anybody else who would like to have anything to say about what's going on, especially here in Niagara with housing. What do you see happening? What do we need? What can we do? And we just have a few minutes left. So anybody who would like to speak, I'd be happy to hear from you. Or your own situation, like Fiona was talking about her situation. I think those stories are also important. Annette, did you have something else?
Yeah, so in Grimsby, there's been a lot of condo buildings in the west. And there's not, like Franz is saying, there's not a lot of the missing middle. Affordable housing for, for anyone. And I grew up in Grimsby. I've seen a lot of changes. I see that, our seniors have to actually move out of our community to get the proper residence that they need to live in. So, there isn't, opportunities like bungalows. So maybe people have mobility issues. They don't want a big home. They can't, clean it, or, whatever their, issue is. But they actually have, there's not a lot to choose from. It's either single family dwellings, or there's condos, these new condos, and a lot of those are actually built very poorly. So yeah, we need to focus on the missing middle and the livable communities downtown, so that it's walkable for people that may have mobility issues, or they can't drive, something along those lines.
One of the issues we have too here in Niagara is we don't have a good public transportation system. So I know in my own community in Vineland, they're talking about building a hotel and condo complex down at the end of Victoria. So that's right on the lake, on the other side of the QEW, and there's no public transportation. And so, maybe in a city where there's public transportation, you can reduce parking. But here, there's no grocery store, there's no drugstore, there's nothing you can get to by walking. There's nothing within walking distance, and there's nothing in terms of public transportation. So, there's some special challenges in a lot of places here in Niagara that you wouldn't necessarily have in bigger communities with better transportation systems. Although I could say, looking at what's going on in Toronto right now, maybe the transportation system there isn't so great either. Fiona, go ahead.
I talk to my MP on a fairly regular basis because I find he listens, even though he knows darn well I don't vote for his party. I'm just intrigued by the fact that he's a Liberal, that the Liberals just announced this massive infusion of cash for transit. And I'm thinking, Liz, if you're talking about going to certainly the Liberal MPs in Niagara, that we could push the idea that, oh, you might be running again fairly shortly. And I noticed that they're starting to do retail, retail campaigning already. That it might be a really good idea to take a look at not only at the report, but also it's starting to say that you will fight, in your writing for some of those new federal transit dollars to come to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. There's lots of things we can be talking to our MPs and MPPs about. All right, anyone else?
I just want to say one of the positives that Victor mentioned was secondary dwelling units or extra units on properties that already exist. That is something I'm seeing a bit more of in Pelham, including a friend who is building a tiny house in the back of a married couple that she's friends with, and they're doing a reverse mortgage and she's going to rent from them. So there are some creative solutions for making better use of residential land that already exists, but it's kind of being left to citizens to, do the creative thinking on this rather than having anything that's kind of being promoted or supported at governmental levels.
I'm wondering if another thing that we could do is highlight some of those things. I know we have at least one builder in Niagara who does some really creative things in terms of building more affordable units, less parking, and things like including a car that the entire building can use, or e-bikes, and maybe highlighting some of these things where people are building these secondary units. So there may be something we can do that way. But again, as much as we take on work, and we need to keep talking to people and spreading information, we need to get the government to do their work. The federal government needs to do their work, the provincial government needs to do their work, and the municipal government needs to do their work. And so I think, advocacy groups are important, and doing the work that we do and getting people to push their politicians. I think you can't get change any faster than through policy, right? Getting good policy in place is the best way to affect change. So whatever we can do to get good policy in place, we need to do. All right, Victor and Franz, do you have any final words?
Thank you.
And thank you very much for this opportunity and for all those great comments and questions.
All right, that's it. That was short and sweet. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. There will be follow-up from me for those of you who are on the BCAC email list. I'll let you know where you can access the recording of this meeting. And if you have any comments or concerns that you didn't feel free to share tonight, but you would like to share just in an email with me, please feel free to do that. Don't forget to go to the Alliance for a Livable Ontario site, take a look at the report, download some of the videos, share some of that stuff. We can make this change one way or another. One way or another, we can do it. Okay, thanks everybody. Good night.
Thanks, Liz. Franz, Victor.